Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere quiet. Really quiet. No traffic, no phones, no neighbors arguing over who stole whose goats. Just stone corridors, fluttering candlelight, and the scratch of a quill on vellum. You are a Scribe, and this is your life one day, in real time. In a 12th century monastery, the cold stone under your feet is unforgiving. The bell rings before dawn, not gently, but with the shrill certainty of someone who very much does not care that you were dreaming of warm soup or dancing goats. You're awake now, whether you like it or not. You pull your rough woolen habit over your shoulders. It smells faintly of damp straw and lavender from the herb storeroom. You sit up slowly on your straw-stuffed mattress, if you could call it that. Try not to bang your head on the low stone arch above. It happens often, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're listening from now. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bell is still ringing as you shuffle out of your cell, bare feet slapping the chilled floor. You don't run not because you're particularly pious this morning, but because running means slipping, and slipping means bruises and penance. Besides, you already stubbed your toe on a loose floor tile last week. It's still purple. The corridor smells faintly of wax, wet limestone, and ink. You pass Brother Alaric, who's already mouthing his prayers, eyes slightly glazed, like he hasn't slept since Easter. He probably hasn't. You make it to the cloister, just in time to join the procession of yawning monks in identical robes, filing toward the chapel for matins. It's still dark out. The sky is that inky blue-gray, just enough light to see your breath fog in front of you. Someone coughs behind you. Someone else farts. Monastic silence is not always elegant. The chapel is dark, lit only by 2 lanterns, swaying slightly in the breeze. The service is long, repetitive, sung in plain song, those drawn-out tones that are more like a soft chant than any real melody. Your eyes start to droop. You try not to sway, even as your stomach reminds you that you skipped supper last night to finish copying an especially complicated illuminated capital Q halfway through the service. Your mind drifts to the parchment waiting on your desk. It's stretched and scraped to smooth perfection, and you left a half-finished letter S curling like a dragon's tail. You'll have to finish it before the ink dries in the pâte, or worse, before it molds. Historians still argue whether monks were genuinely devout or just stuck in a centuries-long group project they couldn't drop. You, personally, would trade 3 Avenue Marias for a strong cup of coffee. But alas, no beans in this part of England. Not yet. After matins, you don't head straight to breakfast. No, you double back to the Scriptorium, because you, dear listener, are obsessed. Maybe it's the smell of vellum, or the joy of forming the perfect G. Or maybe it's just the one place where no one talks to you. You push open the heavy oak door. It creaks like it's auditioning for a haunted castle. Inside, rows of desks, tiny windows, and cold, always cold. Your writing tools are where you left: a minkhorn, quills, knife for scraping, pumice for smoothing, and that curious beetle shell you found in the garden and keep for luck. The first thing you do is uncap the ink. It's a thick, oily black made from oak galls, iron salts, and just a dash of vinegar. The smell could wake the dead door, at least a sleepy monk. You lift your quill, flex it gently like a violinist limbering up, then scritch the first letter of the day, ink flowing, silent but for your breath and the ticking of the candle as it melts. You don't get long, 15-20 minutes tops. Then the bell rings again. Breakfast. You sigh, stretch your fingers, and head for the refectory, already rehearsing in your head how to copy the next line without smudging the red rubrication. Your life may seem small from the outside, bells, ink, bread, repeat. But in this moment, as you walk through the hushed corridors lined with hand-painted saints, your ink-stained hands tucked into your sleeves, it feels like you hold something eternal. Every letter you write, every flourish you add, could echo for centuries. Well, unless the abbot decides to reuse your parchment for accounting notes. Again, by the time you shuffle into the refectory, your stomach is conducting Gregorian chants of its own. The long wooden tables stretch down the hall like a parade of penitents, and you find your usual place, third seat from the end, close enough to the hearth to feel a whisper of warmth, but far enough to avoid the soup drips from Brother Hubert. The rule is silence, always silence during meals, which means, naturally, that everyone finds increasingly inventive ways to make noise without technically breaking the vow. There's the throat-clearing symphony, the spoon percussion, the occasional dramatic sniff. It's less peaceful and more performative restraint. Breakfast is predictable. Porridge, again, made from barley, this week sure, more forgiving on the teeth. It's not hot so much as no longer cold. Still, you accept the bowl gratefully, tracing a small cross over it before digging in with your wooden spoon. The first bite is bland. The second is better. The third almost tastes like something. Hunger helps. Across the table, Brother Lionel tries to catch your eye. He has a mischievous gleam that rarely bodes well. You look away quickly, pretending to contemplate the consistency of your porridge. It doesn't work. A scrap of parchment is slipped discreetly onto your bench. You glance down. It's a tiny sketch of an angel with your nose. You suppress a snort. This is not the first time, brother. Lionel has blessed your likeness with wings and passive-aggressive halos. Historians still argue whether marginal doodles were expressions of boredom, rebellion, or divine inspiration. You suspect it's all three, and that Lionel may one day be canonized as the patron saint of creative procrastination after breakfast. There's no lounging, no lingering with a second cup of imaginary coffee, just the quiet shuffling of feet and the nod of Brother Prior, dismissing you with the faintest of eyebrow lifts. It's Scriptorium time. You walk the narrow corridor lined with faded tapestries. One of them St. Jerome with his lioness hanging suspiciously askew again. You suspect Brother Arnold, who has a vendetta against lions ever since he was bitten by a particularly testy monastery cat. It's still unclear whether the lion in the tapestry or the cat in question looked more apologetic back in the Scriptorium. You settle into your desk. The air is still cold. The vellum is colder. You flex your fingers, stretch your neck, and carefully unroll the manuscript you left bookmarked with a chicken feather. Your task for the morning, copying a sermon by St. Augustine. Dense Latin, few line breaks. And the abbot insists you match the style of a long-dead scribe with notoriously curly lettering. Joy. But, first, ink check. You dip your quill and begin. The first few letters come easily. There's something hypnotic about it, the way your hand moves, the gentle resistance of the page, the glimmer of wet ink under flickering candlelight. You lose track of time. The world narrows 2 lines and loops, and the faint creak of someone adjusting a stool. Then disaster. Blot. Your quill catches a dry patch, and a fat droplet of ink lands squarely in the middle of the word veritas, truth. Oh, the irony. You sit back, stare at it, and sigh. Reaching for your knife, you begin to gently scrape away the error. The blade hisses softly as it lifts ink and skin from the page, leaving a pale scar. You'll have to fix the word later with a finer brush and hope no one notices. Mistakes are inevitable. The trick is hiding them well enough that future readers assume the blemish is just ... character, or maybe a bored monk's idea of divine testing. As you work, the door creaks open and Brother Anselm enters carrying a stack of fresh vellum sheets. He looks exhausted. Apparently, one of the new novices mistook a completed gospel for kindling. That novice has now been reassigned to sweeping the pig pens, possibly forever. You take one of the vellum sheets, running your fingers along the edge, smooth, pale, made from calfskin, a luxury. You note a tiny hole near the top, probably from a flea bite on the original animal. You'll have to work around it, maybe make it the eye of an illuminated fish. Fish are a safe choice. You learned that the hard way, after drawing what you thought was a whimsical hedgehog in the margins of a psalter. The abbot disagreed, passionately, declared it a demonic piglet, and made you recopy 5 entire pages. You work through the morning, pausing only to stretch your back and recut your quill. You use a goose feather for main text, a crow feather for fine detail, and a swan feather when you're feeling theatrical. Today is a goose day. Steady, practical, mildly annoyed by everything. The door creaks open again. This time it's Brother Cuthbert, who oversees the wine cellar and smells faintly of fermented apples. He mumbles something about illumination, quality decline, and last week's purple being too joyful. You nod solemnly and return to your work, resisting the urge to draw a dancing grape in the margin. Outside, the chapel bells toll for terse mid-morning prayer. But today, you stay seated. You've been granted special permission to work through it, which is both an honor and a trap. You're now expected to finish a double quota. Joy, again. You glance around at the others, Brother Matthew muttering to himself as he corrects a line, Brother Hildebrand gently singing as he paints a gold leaf border. The Scriptorium is a world of its own, timeless, suspended. Outside, kingdoms rise and fall, but in here, the Psalms are forever, and somewhere in the back, Brother Lionel is definitely drawing wings on another unsuspecting saint. The bells toll again, marking the hour for the main meal of the day. You set your quill aside carefully, resisting the very real temptation to toss it across the table in a dramatic flourish. One last glance at your progress. 2 columns of crisp lettering, 1 slightly smudged veritas, and the beginnings of an illuminated capital D with a griffin's tail curling lovingly through the margin. You walk stiffly to the refectory. Your back complains, your knees pop like castanets, and your fingers feel like someone braided them too tight. Welcome to the glamorous life of a medieval scribe. The refectory is noiseless. As always, the monks eat shoulder-to-shoulder, eyes down, mouths closed. Only the appointed reader speaks, reciting from a text propped on a wooden lectern in the corner. Today, it's a particularly dramatic homily about sin, goats, and something called the pit of acrid destiny. You eat slowly, trying not to imagine what acrid destiny would smell like. Today's fare is a thin lentil stew. It's slightly better than the porridge, meaning it doesn't try to slide off the spoon in one gelatinous wobble. There's also a hunk of coarse brown bread that could double as a projectile weapon in a siege. You chew thoughtfully, wondering if it's the same bread from last Thursday. Just rotated counter-clockwise across the table. Brother Lionel has taken to humming tunelessly through his nose. It's not technically speech, which means it's not technically forbidden. You give him a sideways glare. He raises one eyebrow and promptly sneezes into his stew, which is both revolting and strangely karmic. You finish your bowl, offer the mandatory nod of thanks, and rise with the others to clear your place. The kitchen boys accept the bowls wordlessly, already plunging them into buckets of cloudy rinse water. You're briefly grateful you're not on scullery duty today. Last week, someone found a fishbone lodged inside a ladle. No one knows how it got there. The monastery hasn't had fish in nearly a month. From the refectory, you file back toward the Scriptorium. But today there's a detour. Brother Gaihi of the Squint, an unfortunate toenails, intercepts you near the cloister. Abbot wants fresh rubrics done, he says simply, handing you a wax tablet with the instructions etched in blocky letters. Use red, not orange. Definitely not that pink you mixed last week. You nod, as if the pink was a mistake. It wasn't. It was magnificent. closing parenthesis. So, instead of going directly back to the scriptorium, you make your way to the pigment storeroom, a vaulted chamber, tucked behind the chapel that smells like vinegar, crushed flowers, and something vaguely sulphurous, possibly Brother Cuthbert's socks. You light a taper and scan the shelves. Jars of powdered minerals line the walls, each more dangerous and fabulous than the last. There's malachite for green, azurite for blue, and vermilion cinnabar, really for that glorious, dangerous red. You handle that one with care. Everyone knows the story of Brother Damascus, who licked his fingers after mixing vermilion and spent the next 3 days hallucinating flying squirrels with halos. Historians still argue whether early scribes understood the toxicity of their pigments, or simply accepted vivid hallucinations as occupational perks. Either way, you don't take chances. You use a wooden spatula. You grind the vermilion into a fine dust with the mortar and pestle. Then add just enough egg white and water to make a smooth, glistening paint. The red glows even in the dim light, rich, deep, utterly holy. You ladle it carefully into a small ceramic cup and hold it like it's made of gold. On your way back, you pass the courtyard garden. It's still modest, late spring, with sage and thyme just starting to wake up. You catch sight of Brother Alaric leaning over a bed of lettuces, whispering to them. He swears they grow straighter if spoken to gently. You make a mental note to draw a Saint Blessing lettuce in your next margin. Back in the scriptorium, your desk waits patiently. The parchment sheet for the rubrics lies stretched across the board, weighted with 2 smooth stones. You kneel briefly, standard practice, partly for reverence, partly because sitting too long turns your legs into boiled eels, and begin lettering. Rubrics are the redinked instructions that guide readers through the text. Think ancient bullet points, but with dramatic Latin phrases and a flair for theatricality. Your task: 15 lines of instructions for a new liturgical calendar. You work slowly, carefully, dipping and dragging your brush across the page like a spider spinning thread. As you finish the 4th line, a shadow passes behind you. It's Brother Baldwin. You freeze. Brother Baldwin is the monastery's official illuminator and the unofficial bringer of dread. He's ancient, stooped, and has eyes that could curdle cream. He stops behind you, stares, breathes through his nose like an angry walrus. Then, without a word, he places a tiny gold leaf square beside your brush and walks away. A gift, a warning, a sarcastic commentary on your pink phase. You're not sure, but you accept it with a nod, tuck it under a stone, and return to work. Outside, the wind picks up. The monastery walls creak softly, and somewhere down the corridor, a door bangs open and closed. You don't look up. Your brush moves steadily, ink flowing in ribbons. Each letter, a small act of devotion, or at least of defiance against the boredom. You finish the last line just as the bell tolls for none the 9th hour. Not that you ever keep count. The days blur together here, in ink and prayer, and the occasional stolen apple. You stretch again, your shoulders pop. You whisper a private prayer that your red doesn't flake this time, and then you gather your tools, blow gently on the wet letters, and smile to yourself. That pink, you're bringing it back. The rhythm of the day hums on, like a chant that never ends, just changes tone. The scriptorium has settled into its afternoon hush, that special kind of silence, thick with concentration, ink, and low-grade resentment. You return to your regular desk, rubrics done, pigment cups safely returned. The parchment you left earlier greets you like a passive-aggressive friend, slightly wrinkled, unblinking, and absolutely demanding your attention. You glance down and notice the mistake. There it is, in the bottom margin, a missing line, skipped during morning copying. You feel that sinking sensation in your gut, like realizing too late you've blessed the bread after biting it. You stare at the gap. It's not big, just wide enough to cause long-term chaos if left uncorrected. You've got 3 options. Start over painful, squeeze the text into the margin messy, or blame Brother Lionel. You go with a 4th option, marginalia, magic. You sharpen your quill to a fine point, draft a correction mark, and sneak the missing line into the space using the smallest lettering you can muster without needing a magnifying lens. It's not elegant, but it's effective. You might even get away with "it unless Brother Baldwin is feeling especially petty today," to make peace with the parchment gods. You reward yourself by adding a little doodle in the corner, a snail riding a rooster. It's absurd, delightful, and completely the kind of thing a 12th century monk would draw. Contrary to popular belief, medieval manuscripts weren't all serious psalms and stern saints. They had jokes, weird ones. Historians still argue whether these drawings had deep symbolic meaning, or were just the 12th century equivalent of doodling in math class. Personally, you suspect both. The scriptorium creaks with the sound of scraping pens, occasional coughs, and the faint whisper of prayer. Brother Lionel lets out a dramatic sigh from 2 desks away. You pretend not to hear. He sighs again, louder. This time, you look up. He grins and mouths, "Look what I found." He holds up a small, ragged scrap of parchment tanned on it, a drawing. So utterly ridiculous you nearly snort ink through your nose. It's Saint Benedict with a mustache, flexing his biceps, captioned Sanctus Swolius. You don't laugh. That would break silence. But you do grin. Monastic life is harsh, repetitive, and full of rules, but sometimes those rules have a little wiggle room if you know where to look. You return to your work, feeling a little lighter. The next passage is from the Book of Psalms. You know the Latin by heart now, but copying it still requires focus. Every letter must be precise, the spacing exact. A single crooked line, and the whole page is ruined or worse, illuminated badly. And speaking of illumination, you're adding the initial B now. It begins the phrase, "Beatus ver," blessed is the man. You've drawn the outlines. Already, a rotund monk with wide eyes, hiding inside the loop of the letter, being tickled by vines. You begin coloring it in, layering pale green with dark olive, then dotting the leaves with tiny gold accents. The gold leaf crackles slightly as it bonds to the adhesive, and the shimmer is magical. There's something deeply satisfying about this part, the quiet artistry. The moment when a single letter becomes a miniature world, you lean in, nose, nearly touching the page, and carefully paint a strawberry in the margin. Why a strawberry? Why not? Suddenly, there's a shout. Everyone freezes. It's Brother Arnold, standing by the doorway with a grimace. Ink spill. He huffs. You wince. That tone usually precedes drama. Sure enough, a novice has knocked an entire pot of walnut ink onto a half-finished sermon. Pages soaked, the floor stained, the air thick with despair. You watch from afar, filled with that special blend of sympathy and smug relief that it wasn't your disaster. The abbot arrives moments later, robes fluttering. There is a silent standoff. The novice looks like he might cry. The abbot, stone-faced, simply gestures toward the mop. Lesson learned. Keep ink away from elbows. And novices, back at your desk. You make another note, this time mental. Invent ink-proof sleeves. Someday, maybe a breeze whispers through the cracks in the wall. The candles flicker. A bird calls outside, reminding you that yes, there is still a world beyond these stone walls. You stretch your back again, trying to remember what trees feel like, or the sun, or a warm bath that doesn't involve hauling buckets from the river. Just then, a tickle in your nose. No, not now. You hold it in, try to ignore it, but it comes anyway. One dramatic sneeze, loud, echoing, and followed by an unmistakable silence. 10 pairs of eyes stare at you in theatrical horror. You bow your head, mutter a muffled "Diogresias," and hope the abbot didn't hear. By the time the bell rings again, your hands are cramped, your neck is stiff, and you're fairly certain one of your fingers has fused permanently into a curled writing position. You blow gently on your work, check for smudges, and sigh. 3 pages done, 1 spilled inkpot avoided, 1 snail-writing rooster immortalized forever. Not bad for a Tuesday. You rise from your desk and shake out your hands, flexing each finger like a maestro between symphonies. The candle wax has hardened at the edge of your desk into a misshapen puddle that looks suspiciously like the Virgin Mary, or maybe a squid. Either way, you leave it untouched. Best not to question divine accidents. The afternoon light slants through the high windows now, casting pale gold across the scriptorium. It's the perfect time pigment hour. You head to the adjacent workshop, the pigment and ink preparation room. It's a narrow chamber lined with stone shelves and stained tables, scattered with tools that look more suited to a wizard than a monk. Mortar and pestles, sieves, glass jars, shells, broken pots, sticks of chalk, bits of charcoal. You inhale deeply, instantly coughing as powdered cinnabar dust tickles your throat. Today, your job is to replenish the blue. You reach for the small linen bag, labeled lapis lazuli. It's not much, just a few thumb-sized stones from the distant mountains of Afghanistan, worth more than a cow and your shoes combined. You're entrusted with grinding them down into ultramarine, a pigment so beautiful, it practically glows. You whisper a silent prayer that you don't drop any. You place one of the stones into a small stone mortar and begin grinding in slow, firm circles. The stone resists at first, then begins to yield with a satisfying crunch. It takes time, long, dusty, elbow-aching time, but eventually, it starts to become dust. Blue dust, divine blue. To purify it, you add melted beeswax and resin, mix it with lye water, and then separate the best particles, the ones that catch the light just so. You strain it like soup through fine cloth, leaving only the richest blue behind, and now you have it. A thimbleful of heaven's color. Historians still argue whether scribes used lapis lazuli sparingly out of reverence or poverty. You suspect it's both. Either way, you never waste a drop. Next, you move on to ink. Your regular black ink is getting sludgy, and the last batch smells oddly of pickled turnips. That means it's time to cook up a new pot. You gather oak galls, those odd little tumor-like growths on oak trees caused by wasps, and crush them into crumbs. Mix them with rainwater, toss in some iron sulfate, and heat over a slow flame. The whole thing bubbles like a suspicious stew. Brother Lionel passes the doorway and waves with 2 fingers, his other hand covered in what looks like purple pigment. He's probably been mixing elderberries again. You'll hear about it when his hands start to smell like sour wine. You return to your ink. As it simmers, it deepens to a dark, inky brown black. Perfect. You bottle it into small ceramic jars, 1 for yourself, 2 for the novices, and 1 labeled Brother Baldwin, do not taste. He's tried before, claimed it reminded him of burnt plums. With your hands stained every shade from soot black to berry red, you wash them in the basin. The water clouds instantly, swirling like a medieval lava lamp. You dry them on your robe. That's what the robe is for, right? As you re-enter the scriptorium, you pass the display shelf of failed pigments. Brother Anselm's orange made from rust flakes, the short-lived silverfish blue which turned green under moonlight, and of course, Lionel pink, a shade banned by the abbot after it caused an entire manuscript to be deemed unsettlingly cheerful. You return to your work refreshed and armed with colors. You set up your tools again, laying out your pigments like a painter about to duel with God. Today, you're illuminating the queue you left unfinished this morning. You outline the loop in gold, then fill the inner space with a pair of lizards tangled in a dance. Why lizards? Well, the abbot said no more dragons, and you like to live dangerously. Your brush moves gently, carefully. Dip, stroke, breathe. It's almost meditative. This process, the world narrows again. You forget your sore shoulders, your chapped lips, the faint draft crawling up your sleeves. There's only paint and parchment, and the knowledge that this letter may survive centuries, assuming no one turns it into a scroll of chicken prices. As you work, you notice something odd in the margin of an older text on the desk beside yours. A faint scribble barely visible. You lean in. It reads, "Brother Hubert has no toes. Pass it on." You stare at it for a long moment, then glance around the room. Brother Hubert, across the way, flexes his sandaled foot, suspiciously close to a candle. Could be true. You make a mental note to add it to the growing collection of marginal gossip. Last week, someone wrote the abbot snores in Latin. This monastery is quieter than a library, but it's filled with secret life, scratched into pages, hidden in vines. Whispered in the spaces between prayers, a chill creeps in from under the door. You pull your sleeves tighter and press on. One last swirl of vermilion, a leaf of gold, the smallest flick of your brush to shade the lizard's eye. Perfect. You sit back and admire your work. Evening is coming. The light has softened, the candles burn lower. The shadows in the corners of the scriptorium grow longer, and your ink pot glints like a dark eye under firelight. You're tired, your wrists ache, but you've brought a little color into a very gray world, and somewhere, deep in the folds of an ancient future, someone might one day look at your illuminated queue and wonder who painted the lizards with such care. You roll your shoulders and exhale slowly. The scriptorium has thinned out. Some brothers have retired to prayer, others to the gardens, and a few, like Brother Lionel, are off somewhere causing theological mischief. You take this as your cue for a short escape. The monastery garden isn't large, but it's a world unto itself. Enclosed by a low stone wall, it's divided into neat squares of herbs, vegetables, and medicinal plants, all meticulously tended. You step into it and instantly feel the change. The air is warmer here, rich with the mingled smells of rosemary, mint, and damp earth. Bees hover lazily over clusters of lavender, and a lone sparrow hops between cabbages like it owns the place. You find your usual spot beneath the elder tree, beside the apothecary's patch of feverfew and yarrow. You sit on the low bench, stretch your legs, and rest your eyes on the rows of soft green dot. It's not exactly a break. Monastic rules don't really allow for breaks, but it's a pause. A breath between the lines of your daily script. You reach into your robe pocket and pull out a scrap of vellum, one of those offcuts too small for proper use but too smooth to waste. You flip it over. On the back is a barely started drawing, a mouse kneeling in prayer. You forgot you even began it. Smiling, you pull a stubby charcoal pencil from your sleeve and begin shading it in, right where the little mouse's tail curls, into a halo. A cough interrupts your peace. You glance up to find Brother Anselm peering down at you, eyes narrowed suspiciously. That creature you drew in the corner of the latest epistle. He begins. You nod cautiously. Was it a duck with antlers? You shrugged. Could have been a griffin. A very small, aquatic griffin. He sighs like a man who has lost several battles, but still shows up to the war. Then, without another word, he turns and shuffles off to scold someone else, possibly Brother Lionel. Probably deserved. You go back to your mouse. Now you've added a tiny scroll in its paws. Perhaps it's copying proverbs, or maybe a recipe for almond milk. Either way, it looks busy. Historians still argue whether the gardens of medieval monasteries were truly tranquil, or if they just offered the illusion of peace between exhausting rituals. You'd argue for illusion. The tranquility lasts until Brother Jerome starts loudly weeding while reciting penance psalms in D minor. Speaking of which, he appears now, dragging a basket of wilted spinach and humming the Dies Irae. You take this as a cue to retreat. You're fond of Jerome, but he tends to treat every casual conversation like a confessional. Back inside, the air feels cooler again. You pass through the cloister, catching a flicker of candlelight reflecting off the polished stone columns. The hush has returned, heavy with age and quiet prayers. You tiptoe past the chapter house where a discussion is happening in a low murmur. Something about ink budgets. You hurry along before you're roped into a lecture about pigment allocation. Back in the scriptorium, your desk is just as you left it. You pull your stool close and settle in again. The manuscript page is nearly finished. Only a few verses left to copy, and then the illumination of the final capital N, large and sprawling. You sketch a rough outline first, a monk sitting inside one loop of the M, quietly writing, while a cat curls around the other loop, sleeping. Cats, after all, are practically mascots in Scribe. They keep mice away from the vellum and occasionally stroll across wet ink like divine jesters. Last winter, a cat actually knocked over Brother Odo's green pigment pot, leaving little paw prints across an entire page of Leviticus. The page now lives in the restricted archives under a note reading Felix Sanctus. Interruptus. You mix a bit of ochre and sienna for the robes, shade the cat in soft gray, and add tiny gold stars into the background. Stars were never mentioned in the original text, but you like to think they're implied. Just as you finish the tale of the M. The door creaks open and the abbot himself steps inside. You freeze. He walks slowly, eyes sweeping the room like a hawk hunting lazy mice. He stops at your desk. You rise to your feet, bow slightly, trying to look exactly halfway between humble and competent. It's an art form. He looks down at your page. Silence then. A nod. He turns and leaves. You exhale so deeply your soul nearly leaves your body. That nod could mean anything. Approval, toleration, mild surprise. Or he mistook your work for Brother Baldwin's. You'll never know. The bell rings again. Faint and echoing. Time for vespers, evening prayers. Await, but not before you carefully tuck your manuscript into its folder of protective cloth and place it gently into the storage chest under your desk. You close the lid with a reverent sigh, like tucking a child into bed if that child were 3 months of work and your entire future reputation. The candles are dimmer now. Outside, the sun is slipping behind the hills, bleeding gold into the sky. The monastery changes tone in this hour. Less scribe, more soul. You take a moment to gather your tools, wrap your pigments, and whisper a small benediction over your finished page. You do this every time, not out of fear, but respect, for the parchment, for the words, for the countless anonymous monks whose letters brought light through centuries of dark. Then you rise, crack your neck once more, and join the others as they shuffle toward the chapel, blistered, ink-stained, and quietly triumphant. You walk in the long procession toward the chapel for vespers, the soft slap of sandals on stone creating a rhythm older than any hymn. The corridor glows with flickering candlelight, casting long distorted shadows of the monks against the walls. You blend in among them, another bent head, another tired body wrapped in wool. But inside, you're still buzzing. That last page, your best yet. The chapel door yawns open ahead. Cool air rolls out like a sigh from the building itself. The space is vast and echoing, the stone walls adorned with faded frescoes and time-worn carvings. You take your usual place near the back, behind Brother Cuthbert, who hums almost imperceptibly through the prayers, and in front of Brother Baldwin, who's been known to fall asleep mid-chant and snore in rhythmic sync with the choir. Vespers begins. The chants rise and fall, slow and solemn, wrapping around your thoughts like fog. You join in, mouthing the Latin phrases, your voice barely audible, your mind already drifting. You're thinking about that illuminated M. Should you have added the stars? Was the cat too playful? Would Saint Benedict approve? Historians still argue whether the scribe's marginal decorations were sanctioned by abbots or simply tolerated in that don't ask, don't tell kind of way. You like to imagine some divine entity looking down and laughing softly at every doodled rabbit and dancing. Bishop in the margins. You feel a sting in your fingers, blisters from too many hours pressing quill to parchment. You flex them behind your back during the chant. There's a certain holiness, you suppose, in suffering for sacred words. But even the psalms can't distract from the dull throb of overuse. The wax from the prayer candle beside you drips steadily, landing on the cold flagstone. You watch it pool into a tiny mound, cooling, hardening, becoming permanent, just like your ink, just like your pages, just like you. After the service ends, there's a brief moment of peace. The monks file out, murmuring their evening benedictions. Outside, the sky is darkening into a bruised purple, stars emerging like silver pinpricks. You don't go straight to your cell. Not yet. Instead, you return to the Scriptorium one last time. There's no one there now. The room is quiet, the kind of silence that makes your ears ring with the absence of sound. The oil lamps are low, casting an amber glow that makes every corner feel secret. You walk to your desk and open your chest, just for a peek. The manuscript lies there, your day's labor. 3 finished pages, 2 flourished capitals, 1 rebuked pink, and a mouse saint who might be your best work yet. You run your hand over the vellum, feeling the texture, smooth in some places, raised where the ink has piled just slightly. These aren't just words. They're topography, geography, monuments to your labor. You rewrap it carefully, then pause, because there's one last thing to do. From the inside of your desk drawer, you pull out a hidden scrap of parchment, folded and well-worn. On it, your personal journal, not officially allowed, but quietly, inevitably, done by nearly every scribe you've ever known. You record the day in short notes, 3 pages, 1 marginal lizard. Ink spill avoided. Brother Lionel almost started a fire, with the gold leaf burner again. Garden still smells like mint. That cat came back. Left paw prints. I kept 1. P.S. The abbot nodded. You fold the scrap again, tuck it away, and blow out the lantern. Time to return to your cell. The halls are mostly empty now. A few late-night prayers echo from the far end. You walk slowly, savoring the hush. Your sandals slap lightly against the floor, and for once, no one stops you. No requests, no corrections. Just you and your quiet, ink-stained satisfaction. You reach your cell and push open the heavy door. It smells of wax, parchment, and the faintest trace of sheep's wool from your bedding. You light your stub of a candle and sit on the edge of your straw-filled mattress. Outside your tiny window, the stars blink steadily. You wonder if anyone, centuries from now, will read your pages and see not just the text, but the hand behind it. The humor in the doodles, the weariness in the tight lettering, the joy in a well-formed cue. You smile to yourself and stretch out your fingers again. The blisters sting. Your neck aches. You wouldn't trade it for anything. Then, as you prepare for rest, you remember, you promised Brother Baldwin you'd check the index on a certain banned manuscript. You'd hoped he'd forget. But curiosity stirs in your chest like a candle's flame. What harm could it do? 1 peek, 1 glimpse at the forbidden. You glance at the dark hallway beyond your door, then back at the faintly glowing candle. You're not tired just yet. You slip from your cell with the softest creak of wood on stone, candle shielded behind your sleeve. The hallway is colder now, each draft wrapping around your ankles like a warning. But you walk on, guided by a mix of reckless curiosity and the quiet thrill of doing something technically against the rules, though in your defense. Those rules were written by monks with questionable taste in illumination themes. Your destination, the restricted section of the library now, before you get any wild ideas. This isn't some towering labyrinth of secret staircases and magical grimoires. It's a small, heavy wooden door, tucked behind the sacristy, locked most of the time, and rarely spoken of in polite monastic company. But tonight, by some miracle or perhaps Brother Baldwin's meddling, the latch has been left open. You push the door slowly, the hinges groaning with the drama of a theater curtain. Inside, the room is close, dry, and heavy with the scent of dust, tallow, and secrets. Books and scrolls sit in uneven stacks, bound in cracked leather or wrapped in cloth so old the patterns have vanished. You step inside, your candle throws long, nervous shadows across the walls. You scan the shelves. You're not looking for theology or sermons. You're looking for that one book, the bestiary no one talks about anymore. And there it is, right where Brother Baldwin said it would be, bound in dark blue leather, clasped in tarnished brass, with a cover too elaborate to be anything not scandalous. You lift it gently. It's heavier than it looks. You place it on the small reading desk, blow the dust from its cover, and unlatch the clasps with a faint click. Inside, the first page greets you with a burst of color, so vivid, it's like stepping into a dream. A serpent with peacock feathers curls around a tree bearing golden apples. The text written in a slanted foreign hand explains that the creature is both wise and treacherous, able to quote scripture and steal chickens. You flip to the next page. A centaur jousting with a bishop, then a unicorn sitting calmly in a woman's lap, both sipping from goblets, and there your favorite lion with two faces, one roaring, one weeping. The caption reads, "The lion mourns when it eats a philosopher." You're not sure what that means, but it feels profound. Historians still argue whether medieval bestiaries were meant as moral instruction, zoological records, or something more whimsical. This one leans heavily into the whimsical, and possibly heretical. As you turn the pages, you begin to notice something unusual. The illustrations grow. Stranger. 1 shows a monk being chased by a snail wielding a sword. Another depicts a dragon curling protectively around a sleeping lamb, with the Latin caption translating roughly to "sometimes evil naps." You laugh quietly, the kind of laugh you feel in your shoulders, not your voice. This isn't just a book, it's an escape hatch. A secret corner of the world where someone, centuries ago, dared to be ridiculous. And then, near the end, a single loose page falls out. You catch it mid-air, nearly dropping your candle in the process. It's a large O filled with a battlefield scene, hedgehogs on one side, frogs on the other, tiny helmets, tiny swords, one frog atop a carrot, like a warhorse. You stare at it for a long moment. This is art. You carefully slide the page back into the book and close it with reverence. You may be a humble scribe, but tonight you feel like the last reader of a forgotten language. You reclasp the book, replace it on the shelf, and step backward, bowing slightly. The candle is almost burned down now, wax trailing dangerously close to your fingers. Time to return, before you start seeing two-headed goats where there are none. The corridor back to your cell feels longer now, not ominous, just quieter. Like the monastery knows where you've been and is choosing not to comment. You slip back into your cell unnoticed, push the door closed, and slide the latch with a quiet finality. You set the dying candle in its holder and sit on the edge of your straw bed. Your heart is still thudding softly, not from fear, but from that strange joy that comes from breaking the smallest rule for the biggest reason. Wonder. Your fingers itch to draw. So you take a scrap of leftover parchment and begin sketching what you remember. The rooster riding hedgehog, the philosopher lion, the snail with a grudge. You know you'll never include these in official manuscripts, but maybe, just maybe, a small frog general might one day sneak into a margin where no one's looking. You yawn, the kind that starts in your spine and pulls the world downward with it. Your eyes blur. The candle flickers once, twice, then goes out. Darkness. You lie back on your mattress. Ink-stained fingers laced over your chest, and whisper a single, final thought. I really hope Brother Baldwin doesn't tell the abbot. You wake not to the bell, but to a sharp crick in your neck and the faint scent of old parchment. The candle has burned itself out completely, leaving only a stub and a halo of hardened wax near your bed. Outside, the dawn is still only a suggestion, just the faintest gray light pressing against the tiny window's edges. You stretch carefully, trying not to alert your spine to the misdeeds of last night's unauthorized reading adventure. Your muscles protest with every movement, as if they've filed an official complaint overnight. You rise, dress, and make your way to the chapel for the early service of lauds. This time, no hurrying. You're early, you're rested, you're also quietly smug. During the chant, your thoughts drift against 2 frogs on carrots, 2 gold-leafed lions, 2 secret sketches no one's seen but you. It's a strange thing, this mix of the sacred and the absurd. Somehow, it fits. Maybe the scribes of old knew exactly what they were doing when they filled the margins with dragons and wimples and monkeys riding goats. After the service, you skip breakfast, not out of piety, but because today's porridge smells even more suspicious than usual. Instead, you slip back to the Scriptorium to be alone for a while. You love it best when it's empty. The Scriptorium in the early morning is like a cathedral for silence. The air is cool, the tools untouched, and your desk feels like a waiting friend. You sit, unwrap your manuscript, and marvel at it all over again. This thing you're making, these words, these flourishes, these colors, they're yours, and not. You're copying sacred texts. Nothing you write is new, but your hand. Is there your decisions, your errors, your little jokes? That's the quiet legacy of the scribe, invisible and intimate. You set about your next task, lettering the next section of the Psalter, the opening word, Miserere have mercy. Fitting. You take a deep breath and begin. Halfway through the first column, a sudden thud makes you jump. It's Brother Lionel. He's leaning against the doorframe like a bard mid-ballad. You missed breakfast, he says. The porridge was unusually, aggressive. You nod, still writing. I took that as a sign from God. He enters, holding a mug of weak ale in one hand and a folded scrap in the other. He sets the mug beside your elbow and slides the scrap toward you. New doodle, he whispers. You unfold it. It's a pig in a halo holding a quill, surrounded by the caption, Sanctus Scriblis, patron of marginal errors. You laugh quietly, but sincerely, then tuck it into your robe. The day flows on. As the Scriptorium fills, the usual symphony resumes, quills scratching, pages turning, the occasional whispered Latin pun. You fall into rhythm. You don't even notice your fingers cramping until you pause to rink your quill and realize one of your knuckles has locked up like a church door in Lent. You flex your hand and whisper encouragements to your joints. They do not listen. Somewhere behind you, Brother Baldwin mutters a curse in old High German. Probably dropped a pigment jar. Again, you glance across the room. Brother Anselm is illuminating a phoenix today, its feathers made from overlapping petals of flame. The effect is beautiful. You nod in silent admiration. He doesn't see, but you're sure he feels it. The mutual nod of the monastic creatives. A few hours later, the abbot visits. He walks slowly between the desks, pausing here and there. When he reaches yours, you straighten. He picks up your manuscript, flips a page, stops, stares. It's the cat. You swallow. He sets the manuscript down, stares at you with unreadable expression, and says one word, whiskers. You nod slowly. Symbolic? He doesn't blink. Of what? You clear your throat. Silence and vigilance. He holds your gaze a moment longer, then the faintest twitch of a smile. He moves on. You exhale and take the biggest, sip of lukewarm ale a monk has ever taken, without sinning. By the time the bells ring for the midday meal, you're halfway through the psalter dangerously close to achieving something resembling inner peace, which means it's the perfect moment for Brother Cuthbert to stumble in, trailed by two novices covered in blue powder. You don't ask, you just lift your manuscript off the desk and move it far away from the disaster zone. Historians still argue whether scriptoriums were the solemn temples of devotion they appear in Artur, barely controlled chaos, powered by elbow grease and divine intervention, based on the sight of one novice sneezing out what appears to be lapis dust. You have a strong opinion. After the chaos settles, you finish your section and pull out the forbidden scrap from last night, the one with the frogs and the hedgehogs. You stare at it a moment, smile, and carefully tuck it into the inside cover of your manuscript. You don't sign your work. You're not allowed. But maybe, just maybe, some curious soul, centuries from now, will find that frog general and know someone was here, someone who loved this, down to the blisters. The day folds itself into dusk, golden light pooling on the scriptorium floor, catching the edges of half-illuminated pages and half-lidded eyes. The monks begin to thin out, their tasks completed, their arms heavy with copied psalters and their robes marked with the telltale smears of the trade ink wax, wine, the occasional beetle wing. You stay, not out of obligation, but love. You've always preferred this hour, when the scriptorium is almost empty. The only sounds, the scratch of your quill, the hiss of a candle sputtering to its end, the far-off echo of someone rehearsing tomorrow's chant. Your last task today is a simple one, copying the final prayer on a page already adorned with flourishes. No illustrations this time, just clean, solemn letters. You slow your hand, letting each letter rest fully on the page. This isn't work anymore, it's meditation. Your candle's flame shivers slightly as a breeze snakes through the window, slit. You press your palm gently to the parchment, warming it, feeling the smooth tension of the vellum beneath your fingertips. The page, like the day, is nearly done. You set down your quill. You sit for a moment, just breathing. Outside, the chapel bells toll compline the final prayer before bed, but your body stays seated, grounded by that particular kind of stillness that only comes when you've given your entire self to something, and it has miraculously not broken you. You gather your tools with the reverence of a priest breaking down the altar: quills, knife, brushes, ink jars, the precious lapis-stained rag you've grown irrationally attached to. You return your manuscript to its cloth wrapping. A few drops of red ink have crusted on the edge of one page, like dried blood. It feels appropriate. Every book here is a quiet martyr. Then you rise, back through the cloister, through shadows long and strange, past walls echoing with the lives of monks long buried under them. The hallway back to your cell is utterly dark, save for your candle's soft globe of light. Flickering like a heartbeat, you enter your cell and close the door. It's the smallest space in the world, but it holds you completely. You sit on the edge of your mattress, remove your sandals, and rub your aching soles. The straw-stuffed bedding crackles under your weight. You reach for your personal scrap journal and jot down the day in crooked script. Finished Psalm 112. Illuminated a cat, nearly melted during Vespers. Brother Lionel invented a new shade of regret. Found a hedgehog in the margins of an older text. Possible spiritual meaning, resilience, or spines. You fold the parchment, tuck it under your straw, and blow out the candle. Darkness rushes in, complete and soft. You lie back, spine groaning one last protest before yielding to stillness. The air smells faintly of ink and beeswax. Your fingers still bear the evidence of your craft, stained, stiff, sacred. You close your eyes. Somewhere outside, an owl hoots. A dog barks in the distance. The monastery exhales its breath, and the world folds into itself again. You smile, barely, because today, like the vellum under your hand, was imperfect. marked, corrected, gloriously real, and tomorrow, you'll wake before the sun, and you'll do it all again. But for now, sleep. Let your body soften now. Your shoulders drop gently toward the mattress. The tension slowly releasing from your hands, wrists, neck. The silence wraps around you again, not the silence of rules or prayer halls, but the kind that fills the space between two pages, the kind where stories settle in, like dust on vellum. Your breath slows, each inhale cool, steady, each exhale longer, quieter. The candle has burned low, the ink has dried, and the tools are resting in their places. There's nothing more to write tonight. No lines to measure, no margins to watch, no smudges to hide. You're just here, still. Whole. And maybe somewhere, in a quiet corner of history, the monk you walked with today still rests, fingers stained, mind full of lions and saints and sneezing novices. Maybe his work survived, maybe it didn't, but the care, the love, the quiet rebellion in every letter that endures, and you, listening now, carry a bit of that in you. So let the images fade, let the chapel grow dim, let the scriptorium go silent. Once more, you've done enough today. You've walked gently through another world. Now, close your eyes, sink deeper into the dark, soft warmth of your own quiet room. The bells won't call you for hours. Sleep deeply. You are safe. You are still. You are home.